So one of the most important positions for Manchester United this summer that they have to get right is that midfield one. Potentially even more important than the striker position, assuming that we're all still alive by the time Bryan Mbeumo is signed. Now right now we have Casemiro there, obviously. And the idea of 1 game a week Casemiro is great on paper. However, in reality, the 1 game Casemiro that we all loved came in Europe, which we're quite famously not competing in this year. And so 1 game a week Casemiro in the Premier League, that could be anything if we're being honest. Now don't get me wrong, the pictures of him for pre-season, he's looking maybe in the best shape I've ever seen him in, but he's not a guarantee. And even if he was, he's probably here for 1 more year. We need to begin future-proofing our team, and that's exactly what I think that this player that I've been scouting today will do for us. Yes, welcome back guys, my name is Harrison and this is The Devil's Dugout. I've been looking at the data, I've been looking at the tapes, and one player that I fell on is Nico Domínguez of Nottingham Forest. He's someone who you probably don't think of when you think, oh, we want to get a Forest target. Obviously in that midfield alone, you've got Elliot Anderson and Morgan Gibbs-White, but Nico Domínguez I think is really underrated. He also fits into what seems to be Ineos's transfer model this summer, being Premier League proven. And something that is really interesting with Nico Domínguez is that there are 2 versions of him. Yes, I know that might sound weird, but let me explain. You've got the Nottingham Forest and Nico Domínguez, and then you've got the Bologna one who thrived under Thiago Motta as Bologna captain. Now he's only just turned 27, I believe he is. He's right-footed, he can play in that 8, of course, that's what we're looking at him to do today, but he can also play in that 6, which is what I meant about future-proofing the team. Because let's say that Amorim gets sacked in the next 6 months. You bring in another manager, they want to switch to a 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1. Who is our natural DM? Casemiro? Yeah, great. That's probably about it, but like I said, even if you get a good 1 game a week Casemiro, he's gone next year. And that's why I wanted to look at someone who can also play as a DM for this right 8 position, because if we did just get another number 8 box-to-box type player, I would worry that I would have too many 8s at that point and it would block Kobbie Mainoo's progression. So let's dive into the data for Nico Domínguez. So when you have a look at his FB ref from his time in the last year at Nottingham Forest, you look at it and you think, okay, well, this is quite clearly a defensive monster above everything else. Because that's exactly how he's deployed for Forest. He is a defensive demon. So you can see 99th percentile for tackles, 98th percentiles for tackles in the defensive third, 95th in the midfield third, and this is really interesting, and this is why I think he could operate as that right 8 as well in Amorim's system specifically, is that he's also 91st percentile for tackles in the attacking third. Straight away, that tells you all you need to know. This guy runs up and down the pitch constantly. He has an engine on him. And what you can see here is that he's in the 96th percentile for dribblers tackled and 98th percentile as well for dribblers challenged. Overall, he's a clean tackler. I'll play this clip here. This is one that I really like. I think this is a great example of his clean tackling. And the Spurs have the ball in a dangerous spot. However, Nico Domínguez comes from behind and tackles from behind in his own penalty area. Now, a player that's not good at tackling would very easily give a penalty away there. But instead he wins the ball back cleanly, starts carrying it forward, and then when he's surrounded by a few players, he protects the ball and then passes it off to, I believe it's Elliot Anderson, correct me if I'm wrong. So in that small clip alone, you can see that he's clean with tackling the ball, and he can protect it from others. Now, he's also a good presser. As you can see here, 80th percentile for interceptions, 98th percentile for tackles and interceptions, and that's because he sniffs out the danger. He is proactive rather than reactive. That is one of the most important things and one of the things so many of our players struggle with in the press. What I mean by this is that they react to where the ball is going rather than predicting where the ball is going. If you merely just react to the pass, you will always, without a shadow of a doubt, be 1 step behind. Because all you're doing then is just chasing the ball. You're not really even pressing at that point. But you can see in this clip here, right? Spurs have the ball and it's not really a dangerous position. However, Dominguez sniffs out the next pass and begins pressing towards it before that pass is even made. And so what could have turned out into being potentially a Spurs attack is instead forcing them back to their goalkeeper to start again. Here's another one. This is what I mean. This is that energy I spoke about and why he has so many tackles in the attacking third as well as defensive third and midfield third, because this guy is everywhere. You can see him here. He's again pushing the play back, but he doesn't give up. He still manages to get a tackle off. Now, in the end, he gives a foul away. It's a soft one, let's be real. But like I said, we already know he's a good tackler, especially when coming from behind. This is the exact same kind of pressing and tackling that Ahmad is incredible at, and honestly, a lot of his goals come from. If we get another player like that, but dotted all around the pitch, then we're laughing. And then something else I just want to quickly comment on regarding his defensive actions, even though it's sort of like, this is a stat I'm not usually a big fan of, and that's the percentage of aerial duels won. He's in the 68th percentile with a 54% won. I mean, that's a good thing. I think aerially and physically, the team is incredibly weak. And so it can't be a bad thing having a player that can win aerial duels. But the reason I think this is sort of like a nothing burger stat is because like an aerial duel won is literally just beating your man in the air. That's it. You could beat your man in the air and the ball bounce out for a throw-in or to the other opposition, and it would still count as percentage duel won. And so it's a bit of a nothing burger stat, but what it at least does tell you is that, yeah, he's physical and yeah, he can beat his man in the air, which, like I said, is something we truly, truly lack in. However, and this is what I mean by two different versions of Nico Domínguez. Obviously, by having a look at the data right now, you would think, yeah, this guy is just pure defense first and just running around the pitch, winning the ball back. That's all you get. I mean, have a look at his creativity stats here, right? All of his passes are short passes, no real goal involvements, barely any key passes, barely any passes into the final third, barely any passes into the penalty area. This is a defense first guy, right? Not really. Let's take a look at his FB ref report from his time at Bologna. So this is him in the Serie A 22-23 season. Straight away, you can see a difference. He's now jumped up into the 80th percentile for key passes, 74th for passes into final third, 72nd into the penalty area, 81st percentile for progressive passes. It's almost like a completely different player. Why is that? So you see at Forest, they forfeit a lot of the possession. I believe in the season in which he joined Forest, they averaged, I think it was like 37.1% possession in a game. I think they were 19th in the league for through balls. And then you compare that to his last season in the Serie A in 22-23, and Nico Domínguez was actually top in the leaderboard for through balls. And so it's actually kind of crazy that Forest saw this player at Bologna and thought, yeah, you know what, that's our defensive glue, but you know what, they were cooking. Because he is that, he can be that, but he can also be both. In fact, I think he has actually played some games in a more attacking midfield role as well for Forest. But first and foremost, what he truly is for Forest, and the reason that he has such high short passing stats and not really anything else, is the fact that his job really is to just win the ball back, look up, where's Gibbs White? There he is. That's what he does. And to be honest, that could translate more or less perfectly to Man United. He could very easily just run around, win that ball back, look up, where's Bruno? Because realistically, Bruno is our Gibbs White. But there's also more than that. Hopefully, we're going to be better going forward now, and he's going to be able to look up and say, oh, you know what? There's Mateus Cunha. There's Brian Mbemo. There's Ahmad out wide. And hopefully a new striker, because heaven forbid he looks up and say, there's Rasmus Højlund. None of us want that now, do we? Now, another skill that I absolutely adore when it comes to Nico Domínguez, and one of the most underrated skills just in football full stop, is his ability to scan around him, his spatial awareness. Especially in the Premier League, because the Premier League is so fast and so physical that it can just change like that. But by scanning, you help reduce the likelihood of a mistake. You help reduce the likelihood of you being caught out in possession. I'm thinking Manu Ugarte versus West Ham. Would you compare that to something like this here against Spurs? He receives the ball, but because he's got spatial awareness, he knows Richarlison's charging him down, so it's just a simple, quick, first-time pass to the left. In reality, it's kind of a nothing pass. But had he tried to hold on to the ball longer than he should have done, then he very easily could have risked forfeiting possession and possibly a goal on the Spurs counter-attack. Again, here's another example. So here, he does so much scanning that he knows he's going to receive the ball, but his next pass has actually already begun before he even receives it. Because he's doing so much scanning over his shoulder, he's looking around him so often that he knows the exact pass that he wants to make before he's even received the ball. This means that when he does receive the ball, he can just turn straight away and bang, play the ball forward. Talking of his passing is great. And what I mean by this is, it's not like 50-yard pingers across the pitch like a Paul Scholes or a Paul Pogba, but it comes down to one of the things that I've spoken about before in this channel, and it's when Michael Carrick spoke about what makes a good pass. One of the things he talked about was being able to do it quickly, and the fact that the person receiving your pass shouldn't have to take any more than 2 touches at an absolute maximum in order to begin the next phase of play. God, it's warm. Anyway, what I mean by that is that a player should be able to just receive the ball, either first time pass it themselves, or take a touch, turn, and then make the pass. It shouldn't be arriving at them bobbling where they have to put their foot on the ball, take a couple touches, and then turn around and then make the pass. It should just be quick, instantaneous. That is what makes a Premier League high-level midfielder. That's the difference. And that's something you see here. The ball comes to Dominguez and he plays what looks like a simple just first time pass, right? However, you can see that the receiving player doesn't have to take many touches, and in fact, it's the pass that started a move that resulted in, albeit an offside one, a goal. But you know what's even better? You don't just get defensive stability or great passing or the ability to press and run up and down the pitch for 90 minutes with Dominguez, you also get a leader. He has captained Bologna after all, at such a young age as well. I remember when Bruno made his debut against Wolves, I want to say it was, one of the things that made me fall in love with him instantly was his leadership. It wasn't the passing, it wasn't the scoring, it was just the ability to point at players which he'd barely known for a day and tell them what to do, point them into position. It showed game intelligence and leadership qualities, something that the club as a whole for years has lacked, outside of Bruno and probably Maguire. You can see in this clip here, right? It seems like nothing, and a lot of you are probably thinking, Harrison, you are really reading into this way too much. But let me explain, right? Forest are leading. They want to take this lead into half-time against Spurs. It's in the 46th minute and they've got a throw-in in the opposition half. And they're ready to take the throw-in then and there, but you've got Dominguez telling his teammate, whoa, stop, slow down, put the ball down, waste a bit of time, let's get into that dressing room in the lead and with momentum. It's a teeny tiny little thing, but I think it's an underrated aspect of a lot of players' games and something which I think a lot of fans really overlook when watching players. Because I don't think you can be a good leader without having good game intelligence, which, like I said, is something we as a club just have lacked for far too long. Now let me get into some tactics and explain truly what I think we could get out of Dominguez if Manchester United were to miraculously sign him tomorrow, which unfortunately I don't think they will. But anyway, where's the fun in that, right? So obviously Amorim wants to play with quick, short passes, quick in the transition, win the ball, press up high up the pitch. That is fundamentally what Amorim wants to build at United. And so let's take a look here. I've added Mbemo in because realistically I would be astounded if Mbemo is not a Manchester United player at some point this summer, right? So we're going to pretend that he's here, but even if he's not, you could put a Mount there. And so, of course, this is where I think Dominguez would play, right? That right midfield role. Now, in the build-up phase, what I've noticed, especially in that win against Villa towards the end of the season, or the last game of the season, which we played really, really well in, annoyingly, is we build up with sort of like a 4-1-3-3. You get usually it's Casemiro playing here in the 1, going from back to front, and then Bruno picks the ball off him, and then the attack goes from there. However, out of possession, when we're pinned into our own half, we line up more like a traditional 5 at the back, and it's like a 5-4-1. I think in games where Mazraoui plays as that right centre-back, because I think he's pretty damn good in the right centre-back role, I'm not going to lie, much better there than he is in the right wing-back, I think you could actually have Dominguez drop back to fill in as the right centre-back, and actually have Mazraoui play more that traditional right-back role out of possession. Because like I said, it's not really a wing-back role in that sense. When we don't have the ball, it is just pure defensive 5 at the back, don't let the other team score. So I think Mazraoui would be better there, and actually having Amad be the one to drift into the midfield. This would leave Mbeumo to be a little bit wider, because we know that Mbeumo loves to receive the ball out wide. And I know a lot of people's criticisms or worries for a lot of people is that Amad and Mbeumo are two very similar players, and if anything, could actually get in each other's way because they both like to receive the ball out wide. So by doing this, I think not only does having Amad here in this midfield role when you don't have the ball help us in the transition when we win it back, because Amad is going to be a lot quicker getting the ball out and progressing further up the pitch. He'd also be able to find Mbeumo without the two of them getting in each other's way, because you've got Mazraoui occupying the wing-back role at that time. Now, obviously, as you push up the pitch, then the formation would change a bit. Mazraoui would then come back more into the central roles. Dominguez pushes up after the pitch and follows Amad's footsteps. But overall, I think this would help us defensively and also in the counter-attacking transition. Let me know what you guys think down below. But last but not least, what I want to say is something that's not really football related or on the pitch related at all regarding Dominguez, and that's his social media presence. I know this sounds mental, but it's one of the most important things I think now in regards to scouting players. Social media has become a huge part of football. Social media is what ruins a lot of footballers. You just take one look at Nico Dominguez's social media page, his Instagram, and you see someone who just cares about football. He's an athlete, right? You don't get the vibe that this is a superstar celebrity wannabe. You know, there's no flashy cars, no modeling. It's just football. And honestly, as I keep saying, we could really, really do with players like that at the club. Because a lot of problems with a lot of players have come from the fact that they want to be the superstar. Let me know in the comment section down below. Do you think Nico Dominguez is an underrated shout for that midfield position? If not, who do you think? Let me know in the comment section down below. Ding that notification bell, subscribe if you're not already, leave a like, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Oh, it's so warm, what the fuck, man?